And boom, according to that, I am live. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. My name is Hiko Simon. I am here every Sunday night, Japan time at 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time. Just quickly reloading to make sure it shows every comment, not just top chat. I don't know why you just want to have top chat. Yeah, how you all doing? Good to see everyone. Good to see we've got Quint Ranked and Dan H already in here. Dan H already rocking with the recommendations. We've got would strongly recommend to use a Lebanese podcast in Arabic with English subtitles called Sarde After Dinner. Alfred Tarazi talked about Japan Red Army and they have Carlos Ghosn. I guess, yeah, I didn't quite follow that at first, but now that you mentioned that, of course, there's Shigenobu, there's the Japan Red Army terrorist mass murderer who, of course, lived there a long time, and Carlos Ghosn being there. Yeah, so you're saying that they talk about Japan topics? That is interesting. It's a funny place. Well, I suppose on the one hand, it seems random that Japan would have connections with Lebanon. I would say, if anything, to the extent there are connections, it's yeah, well, those two things are kind of random and maybe not connected, but of course, just Lebanon has amazing culture and history, just basically that being like the home of the Phoenicians, right? And it's kind of funny, even though they preceded even technically the Roman Empire, right? They were kind of the Carthaginians. I mean, they dominated the Mediterranean, like even before the Greeks did, actually. Um, and even they survived well through all of the sort of ancient history by being these great, very adept at trading and traveling and keeping their identity. And that's gone up until today. So Lebanese are just amazingly worldly. You find them in all parts of the world doing interesting things. So I guess from that perspective, maybe it's not such a mystery that they would have an insightful podcast that talks about Japan. Although from a Japan perspective, it's definitely a big blind spot. Of course, the Japan Red Army saw Lebanon as a useful place to go because it used to be where the PLO had their headquarters after they got kicked out of Jordan. Yeah, to the extent that there were factions of the Japan Red Army which believed in triggering violent global, revolution, communist revolution, and they saw the struggle of the Palestinians as being part of that, and that's why they went there and blew up some airplanes and mass murdered people at airports, and thought that would motivate everybody to agree with them in their way of thinking. But of course, the refugee camps in Lebanon were a place that they. It's funny, I still credited, I suppose, for some of the good work that they did, supporting Palestinian refugees, but also getting on board with some of the worst stuff there. So yeah, it's a fascinating suggestion. Uh, but yeah, and you say that this podcast has English subtitles, and this is on YouTube. Alfred Tarazi. I feel like I've got to take a memo on half of these shows. I will not remember to look that up unless I do that right now. So I'm going to do that. Alfred Tarazi. Man, I mean, I tell you, there's a part of the world there. Always wanted to go to the Middle East for all sorts of reasons. Baalbek is just an amazing place. The you know it has a place both in apart from the fact it's got some of the most spectacular classical ruins in history. It's a bit like the Temple Mount. There's a weird. They've got like these like 50,000-ton stones which were like moved by people there, like for where they have a big temple complex there. Um, just a fascinating part of the world that is unfortunately frequently in turmoil and war and is seldom safe to go to, but fascinating place. Thank you for the recommendation. Traveling Gabriel, good to see you. Tudom, good to see you, Tudom. Greetings from California. Nice to see you. Good morning, California. Good to see you in there. And Believe in Yourself, our man from Canada. Good to have you in here as well. Nice to see people rocking in. It's been an interesting week. You'll see my eyes a little bit red, the one nearest the camera. I don't know if this is Kafunsho starting early. I don't typically get the pine dust Kafunsho, but apparently this year, if you are coming to Japan and you get allergies from pine pollen, this is going to be like a mega year, like 10 times a normal bad year, in Japan. Yeah, I'm not sure what's setting it off for me. I don't typically react to pine. I do get hay fever allergies and itchy eyes, but yes, I apologize. That's the itchy eye at the moment. Yeah, in the topics, good to see Marcos Fernandez. Good to talk to you earlier this evening as well. Thank you for the chat. yeah, as I've been sharing on each show lately, it's just been a mind-blowing time for me going through, just trying to grasp, the sudden rush of innovation around accessible machine learning. I've been playing a lot with ChatGPT, and I had a moment, which I'll talk about later on in the show earlier this week, where I figured out how to code a complete like app, something I've been trying to do for years, something I've been thinking about paying people to do, and yeah, I was able to do it in like 10 minutes with ChatGPT. It's it's not a perfect technology. I'll talk about it a little bit, but it's not just that technology either. There are so many things like this suddenly available. And I never got into NFTs or crypto or anything like that. There are a lot of tech fads that come and go, but I really think this is the real deal. This is something that's really, really going to be disruptive, and it's very exciting. For me, it's just like, okay, I have to learn about this. And yeah, Marcos is doing some really interesting stuff at the moment. So it was great talking with you earlier this evening. Thank you for that. And a reminder to everyone as well, a couple of reminders actually. Yes, it is currently January the 15th. Next Saturday, if you are in Tokyo, the plan is I'm going to show up at the Hobgoblin in Roppongi at 1 p.m. And I'll be there for 3 hours. And if you want to say hello to me in person, if you're in Tokyo and you want to say hello to me in person, I'm going to be there hanging out. I'm hopefully going to America early February, and I'll be there for a while. Yeah, it's a weird situation with coronavirus. It isn't really better than it's been. It's just everybody sort of taking it a bit easier. I guess I'll probably use some precautions. I will, not handshake or anything like that. But it'd be nice just to meet some people. And I haven't really done any I've never really done a proper like Twitter meetup in Tokyo around myself anyway. I've joined other ones. So yeah, if you follow me on Twitter or YouTube and you're able to come into Tokyo next Saturday and you go to the Roppongi Hobgoblin, check out more information on Twitter. I'll post some more info on Twitter about this. But it'd be nice just to say hello, have some lunch. It's always nice to connect with people. And for those who can't, I'm actually always happy. Oh, a couple of other things. I'm always happy to do a web chat like I've done tonight. I don't do them very often. I'm not a big enough channel, I guess, that it's a problem that I need like bouncers keeping the clamoring fans away. It's a good motto, and the people who I meet are always cool. I've already met a number of people here in the chat, and that's another thing as well. If you're ever around in Tokyo, even if you're just visiting Tokyo, typically family schedules and all of that, it's much easier to meet for lunch during the week. Will be interesting when I'm in America. I'll have a lot more time to myself. But yeah, if you ever want to say hello, I mean, there's of course the opportunity next Saturday. But yeah, if you're ever around and want to meet up for lunch or whatever, I'm always happy to do that as well. So yes, Marcos is being a little bit of my guru at the moment, which I very much appreciate. To some of the guidance, it's like I could ask for more, but my mind is so blown by all of the stuff at the moment that I'm taking it in little steps just because I'm finding it kind of overwhelming. There's just so much stuff that's unlocking. Believe in yourself has not been sleeping because of ChatGPT. Yeah, when you figure out what it's good for, I mean, it's fun to get it to tell me a story or have a discussion about philosophy or something, and it can do all those things perfectly well, and those things are perfectly impressive. But when you realize that it can code web pages for you and working apps and API interfaces and, yeah, then you realize, wow, and not just what it is, but what it will be. This is practically a demo. This is still based on data for up to 2021. When you get a full powered version of this and the next presumably exponentially more powerful GPT-4 based version of this that comes out and the competing things that'll come out, yeah, it's just going to be all of a sudden we're going to have like a little toolbox. It's just going to suddenly make us literally a jack of all trades, anything that we want to do. It won't just be a matter of Googling and finding the right instructions and trying it out. You'll actually have customized, for you, step by step on how to do anything, right? How to cook a meal, how to make an app, how to, fly an airliner. I don't know. It's just going to be crazy. So yeah, interesting. Anyway, we've got Maddie here for the Hiko Power Hour. Good to good to have you with us. Traveling Gabriel. Shame you leave tomorrow. Shame indeed you leave tomorrow. Well, I'm sure there'll be other chances anyway. And like I say, I am generally around if you're ever around. Yes, indeed. ChatGPT is scary. The AI on it is so good. Yeah, remember what it is. Ben Duncan, by the way, great. I should go through in a sequence just so I make sure I don't miss people. Um, but yeah, we've got DJ Sunny Side Up. Hello, beautiful person, right back at you. We've got Ben Duncan. We've got Marcos Fernandez. John Carlo Lanoy, good to see you. Wow, we've got so many people rocking in here. Yeah, it is crazy, and like Marcos is talking about, it's great both for improving. I think people look at it and they think, oh, this is going to take my job. In the short term, it's going to make your job a hell of a lot easier, and it's going to probably allow you to redefine your job and think about where you spend your time. To the extent it's going to remove grunt work out of work, like the time that I spend just reviewing docs, looking for differences and looking for gaps and interpreting stuff. The fact that I can get through that work faster and maybe even get help, thinking about, okay, how to actually use my brain and think about what's a strategic decision, to do around stuff. I'm excited by it. Aaron, we got Aaron with the peanuts. Yes, indeed. That is what I work for. Peanuts and likes. I see there are 19 current viewers and only 6 likes. I do appreciate the likes. It's pretty much what I'm working for. So yes, smash the like button on the way in. In terms of the America update, everything's still the same. I go in, it's kind of funny as I've been preparing all this documentation for my US visa application. I have to go to the embassy and do an interview at the end of the month. And I keep thinking of the movie Green Card. On the one hand, it should just be routine and I should get the visa. And as soon as I get it, I'm just going to fly over there as soon as possible. And I'll be there for like half a year. But I don't want to plan anything before then, because then I'm just going to get disappointed. But when I go over there, yeah, it's going to be a rush when I go over there. But yeah, I keep thinking about them. There's a movie, a Gerard Depardieu movie from the 1980s called Green Card, basically about a French waiter and a university student who basically are hooked up as part of a fake marriage business to help people get green cards to America. And basically, they swat up to pass the interview to convince immigration officials that they're really married when they're not, when it's a sham marriage. And yes, it's an old movie. If you've seen it, you've seen it. If you've not, you probably won't even find it anymore. But basically, he gets caught cheating on the test. And they do all this preparation. I keep flashing back to that movie, and it's why I'm being so careful that I don't want to fail the American immigration test. So they ask for your social media now. So I did have to put in Tokyo. I put in my YouTube channel. Was tempted to add in like and subscribe. If you're watching, American government, I hope you're entertained. We'll see what happens. Goodverse Tenshi, excellent to see you. Flying an airliner is easy if it's an Airbus. I don't want to know. I do not want to know, Mr. Cordy Chef. If AI can take my job, please do it. Kyoto Sonata, good to see you. Sorry, it's been a long time. Yeah, it's great to see you, Kyoto Sonata. Great to see you back in here. Nice to see the likes going up as well. Do appreciate it. Yeah, you have to take a test. America's not just letting anyone in. Seriously, it's actually a pretty big deal. Again, because I'm not going in on a tourist visa, I'm going in for a length of time. It's a work deal. So I want to make sure I do it right. Dan H. Kishida is really trying to push the UK into the RCEP block into RCEP to block China from joining. Probably so Japan stays the strongest economy and military power in the group. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with that. I mean, it's good that everyone's making friends. It's good that we discovered a purpose for NATO. But we'll see. Traveling Gabriel, remember, Seattle doesn't represent the whole of the USA. Each state is drastically different. I do know that. And, my experience of America until now was mostly from Chad's Ford in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So pretty much for me at the moment, based on my time in America, especially going through all my passport stamps, America is 90% Philadelphia. It's about... it's about 5% Seattle, about 3% San Francisco, and 2% Hawaii. That's America for me right now. I'm sure it's going to different. US government has entered the chat. Hi, Kustos. Good to see you. Good to see everybody. Yeah. Tomoko said she was given a hard time by immigration. Well, indeed, I think you prepare for the worst. You prepare, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm just super excited about going there. It is really, honestly, from New Zealand, the two places I ever wanted to live were Japan and America. So we'll see. Cheesesteak, that's right. Shubas, great to see you, Shubas. Good morning. Hot cup of tea. You got a hot cuppa? You mean a cup of coffee or a cup of tea? I think of cuppa as a cup of tea, being from New Zealand. But yeah, ready to rock and roll. Good to see you. Those are some sketchy says. So yes, I'm hoping to expand my horizons a little bit, but we'll see what happens. I really hope to get down to Los Angeles. That's like the main thing. Is this my life? Hi from Sweden. Good to see you. Hello. Nice to have Sweden in the room. Pin Duncan. Well, hopefully, yeah, we'll see. I'll be there a little bit, probably around a Seattle honeymoon period, and it'll be for a work purpose. I'll have kind of a mission when I go over there, so we'll see. But anyway, let's get into the topics. There's a lot to talk about tonight, including the big one going around, which we're referring to in the titles. Let's jump in how we started the week. There was an op-ed piece in the Nikkei Shimbun by Tyler Brule, which still reminds me, there's a what's his name, the guy who does Dr. Steve Brule on Funny or Die. I still think it's probably his brother Tyler wrote an op-ed piece that what is Japan, all these masks and COVID precautions, and you're ruining all the nightlife in Daikayama and Roppongi, so I can't go out and pull chicks. It's pretty much what he was writing in the Nikkei. And yeah, Japan, what's with all the masks? What's wrong with you guys? Hey, we're, in America, we are way past masks. You guys are so last year, kind of like, well, yeah. And, on the one hand, I'd say, well, we're doing fine with masks, but we're kind of not. We're actually having record death tolls at the moment. Admittedly, mostly very, very elderly people in Japan. But situation is not good, but most people are still fairly comfortable keeping in Tokyo the masks on. This person being upset it's killing the nightlife. But yeah, there was actually a poll I saw 20 minutes ago, actually, just before I started the show. NHK asked people, are you worried about COVID? Over the last 3 years that we've had the pandemic, starting with extremely worried, pretty worried, not really worried, and not worried at all. And while the number of people who are very worried or quite worried has gone, it's decreased, but it's decreased from like 95% to 85%. 85% of people are still freaked out about COVID here, and so long as that's the case, people are still going to wear masks. And frankly, when it's cold, like it's been lately, I kind of like it. Like it's like a face warmer, and you just don't have people looking at you. So yeah, I was kind of. Some people were mocking that American tourist comes and immediately declares Japan different and wrong. Some people said to me, "Doesn't mean he's wrong just because he's a tourist." I'm like, well, no, he could be correct and a tourist, but yeah, I'm not sure. I see it that way myself. Anyway, it generated some entertaining discussion. Hi, Olivia D. Good to see you. You're the best. Excellent to have you here in the chat. We've got Shubas hoping never to return to the US. Well, I like to think places are what you make of them, but we'll see. I'm going to test that theory. The next story that we have from this week. Oh, yeah. This was a very cool video. There's this great channel, History Matters, which I enjoy watching. They're like these little 3-minute long sort of history videos. And they don't do Japan very often, but they did Japan in this one case where they asked, why did Japan welcome the Dutch? And it goes through the history of Japan and the Dutch. And, most people know that, yes, when all foreigners were banned from Japan, the only foreigners that were allowed were the Dutch, and they had to be on a certain island, Dejima Island off Nagasaki, and they weren't allowed off this island. It was like a little prison, but it was kind of all the international exchange with Japan was through this island. And they would counsel the Japanese government on foreigners, which countries to trust, basically based on who the Netherlands trusts and doesn't trust. And apparently, all of that I knew. That's all well. Everybody knows that history about the Dutch being down in Nagasaki. What I didn't know was apparently in 1853, when Perry was on his way to Japan with the black ships to open Japan up to the world and force the shogunate to capitulate, apparently the Dutch, ahead of Perry, sent a delegation to Nagasaki. Ooh. And said to the shogun, hey, you better look out. America's coming with a bunch of gunboats, and they're gonna wipe the floor with you. So let us sell you some guns so that you can fight them back and defend your sovereignty. To which apparently the shogun said, haha, sneaky Dutch people, we know you're just trying to sell us guns. We don't need your guns. We know that you're just bluffing to sell us guns. Enough with this multi-level marketing shenanigans. Back to your island, Dutch people. And then, of course, the Americans came and opened the country, and the shogunate collapsed. But apparently, the Dutch actually tried to help Japan prevent Perry opening up Japan. History would have been very different, but the one time I guess Japan decided not to listen to the Dutch brought down the shogunate government. I had no idea. It's kind of cool history. But there you go. Never trust it's a statistic you haven't faked yourself, says Kubris Tenshi. Speaking of statistics, kind of interesting. I wondered at the end of last year if Kishida was even going to make it. I was like, get out the wet lettuce, because I'm not sure if Kishida's going to make it to meet Biden, which he did the other day. He had a planned meeting, and of course he's got the G7 coming up soon, so I guess he wants to hold on to power to be able to host the G7 meeting in Japan. However, his approval ratings are in the crapper right now. Basically, as you can see, since last August, they've been in the negative. Most people, the approval rating is 33%, and the disapproval rating is 45%. His cabinet, apart from being seen as mishandling the response to the Abe assassination, not basically allowing cults into Japanese politics too much, 4 corruption scandal resignations, 3 from cabinet members, plus another cabinet member being accused by a Communist Party newspaper today of also having misappropriated fundraising. So we might have a 5th cabinet resignation soon. And he wasn't even the popular choice within the LDP in the first place. He was basically, even though most people preferred Kono as a PM, he got in because he had the numbers from LDP factions, including Abe's old faction. But he basically doesn't. Already now, the net result of this is that even prominent LDP members are already starting to talk about who's going to be next. So it looks like we could be going back to the musical chairs of LDP leadership, but. It's kind of remarkable if Parliament wasn't on vacation like it's been, he might not still be prime minister now, because there's been so many resignations and scandals. Good for Kishida that he gets to do these world trips and so on, and is still surviving. But I don't think he's long for this world, and I've never been particularly impressed by him as a prime minister. He hasn't been. He's no Mori or Aso. He's no affirmatively terrible prime minister. He's just been kind of ineffectual and overseeing, a turbulent time in politics. So my prediction is, I think we're going to get a new Japanese prime minister, and I actually hope that I would back Kono. He's like the only politician in the LDP that I would support for any post, frankly, just about. And I think he'd make a really interesting PM. So we'll see what happens with that. Checking out the comments, we've got a bit of conversations going on there, but nothing particularly aimed at me, so I'm going to move on. I've been talking for years about the problem that Japan has, that on the one hand, the Bank of Japan has been trying desperately. They've been printing money, giving 0 interest, sometimes even negative interest loans to companies, all as part of supporting a government strategy of trying to stimulate positive inflation, to basically grow the economy by having companies use all this extra cash and credit that's available to pay their workers more, to stimulate consumption, to hence stimulate increases in prices, to fuel further wage increases. Basically, like most countries have, a small amount of inflation, which is matched both with wages and the economy. And this is how you keep things sort of moving forward. And Japan has been stagnant or having deflation. Things have been getting cheaper, frankly, if anything. Basically, wages are the same as they were when I got here in the 90s, which, if you think of what average wages were in other countries, average rents, average cost of living, it hasn't changed. But just the last couple of years, wages haven't changed, as I've talked about all the time. Now the cost of goods is starting to increase, particularly with the cost of energy going up and that getting reflected through everything, which is hence, because wages have been stagnant, it means people are getting poorer in Japan and are kind of earning less. And because they're earning less, they're spending less, and it's causing a negative cycle in Japan. So there's been all of this pressure with politicians and the Bank of Japan begging companies to please pay their workers more, and most companies saying, "Well, it's a negative economy. We can't justify pay increases when we're struggling to stay in business ourselves." So in all of that, Uniqlo This is Uniqlo. I'm always wearing tons of Uniqlo stuff. I'm wearing Uniqlo jeans right now. I like their stuff actually. Yeah, and it's cheap and affordable. And while they can be a little bit controversial, they've got a Yanai, their company president, is known as a bit of a maverick and kind of aggressive as a business leader. He's decided to give a ton of workers, not part timers, but regular employees anyway, pay raises of up to 40%. He wants to set a good example and say, yeah, everybody, stop dragging your feet. We should be paying people more so that they spend more. And I suppose Uniqlo is a business which is directly connected to when people have more money, they'll spend more on things like clothes. So I think it's actually setting finally some prominent company setting a positive example. 24 years I've been here, I haven't seen it. So and it actually makes me feel better about all the Uniqlo stuff that I buy. It's kind of funny, there are the fast fashion brands. There's like Gap and so on. I don't know. I always find there's nothing there that I really like or nothing there which really fits me right. And I don't know. Uniqlo is just really good at making stuff that I just happen to really like. Yeah, like I can walk around and pretty much just pick anything off the shelves. So yeah, it's a brand that I like and it's good to see them doing good. So very happy to see that. Shubis has not visited Montana or Idaho. Your loss. You'd like it there except for the winters. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there in winter, but we'll see what happens. Traveling Gabriel, but the government increased taxes as well, so taking money out of the economy. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah. I mean, that is also true. Also, the backlash against tax increases is also pretty, yeah, is also problematic. And yes, people are freaked out. And they are talking about this setting up for more tax increases. Another reason why Kishida is not long for this world, frankly. Jeff, you saw my tweet about the Uniqlo rates. Good on them. I agree. And good to see you, Jeff. Good to see you, Tai Nakamura. Good morning to you. Yeah, often buy from Uniqlo. Eric Bailey says maybe if small business owners didn't have to pay higher taxes for every new worker hired, the economy would do a little better. Oh, and I'm here, so you can start now. Thank you for letting me know that. Dan H., what about wage increases for Bengali and Vietnamese slave labor? Well, in fairness, I don't think they're using that Uniqlo specifically is using Bengali. Are they using Bengali? Maybe you can tell me. The stuff is, I think, a lot of it is made in China, and Uniqlo itself is has a big business in China. But yeah, DJ Sunny side up asking, will I drive in America? Yes, I intend to drive in America. One thing I'm looking forward to is I think I'm checking out the car sharing sites like Turo. It'd be kind of cool to try out. I want to try out driving some electric cars and stuff like that. So yes, I definitely want. I've been to Seattle multiple times, but I've never gotten out of the downtown area. And from what I can see, it's actually got some great nature nearby and some good things to do. So yeah, I definitely want to explore, and I definitely intend to drive. I'll be careful about it, of course, but I have my international permit, yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna do that. So I'm looking forward to that. Next topic, just for people again thinking about their nightlife being ruined by not having masks. Well, if you want to know how intense Japan is about masks, a professional shogi player was disqualified for not covering their nose with masks. It's kind of a common thing that you see Japanese oji-sans and so on going around where they wear the mask, but they have it pulled down below their nose, so it's kind of over their lip, but not their nose. And it just kind of looks like they're not doing it properly. Some people are given the analogy of it's like walking around with your trousers like, unzipped or something like that. It's not a good look. And apparently a shogi player in a professional competition, 56-year-old, was apparently cautioned multiple times to correctly wear his COVID mask, and he did not. And so after multiple warnings that he ignored, he was fired, to which he basically has threatened to file a lawsuit. But yeah, them's the rules. You got to follow them. So there you go. Ben Duncan, get a Testarossa and 80 sunglasses and drive around blasting the Miami Vice theme song. Hell, you know I will. You know I will. I was going through Turo, I think is the name of the site, looking for what's there. I didn't see a Testarossa, but seriously, I would do that. I think I've seen a BMW i8 that's like the closest to that, and I would do that. Rent a Tesla. I'm definitely going to rent a Tesla. Jeff, Seattle has the botanical gardens, which are a great way to spend the afternoon. Not sure on driving out there, but you've only ever visited yourself using bus train. Maybe that's what I'll do. I mean, that's what I did when I was in Vancouver. I have this distorted view, perhaps, of Vancouver being much, 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 much nicer than Seattle, but that was because I went to botanical gardens and I went and did sightseeing, which I haven't really done in Seattle. So, yeah, we'll see. I'll try to figure that out. Uh, yeah, it's often old people. Oh, normally with younger people on the trains in Kansai rather than old people. Interesting one, Kyoto Sonata. In Tokyo, I associate it with sort of old oji-san behavior, but I guess why not? Um, Eric Bailey's doctor doesn't even cover his nose. Well, like I say, I mean, if do you wear your trousers like that? So sir, madam, it's not quite as impactful, I suppose, but you get the idea. You shouldn't have things hanging out over your face pants. Always awkward seeing the word final and solution paired together like that, but it does always happen in the context of apologies to Korea. We're up to like number 30 now or something. This is good news. I'm happy about this. However, I've seen Charlie Brown attempt to kick the football enough times now to know how this goes. So the background to this, you're probably familiar with it. I've talked about it on the show before. What's the quick summary of this? Japan did a lot of bad stuff in Korea during the colonial period, which predates World War II. In World War II, remember, Korea was actually part of Japan during World War II, and there were Koreans who even volunteered for the Japanese or for the Imperial Japanese Army. They were given crappy jobs like prison camp guards and so on, where a lot of them got in trouble. But basically during the war, Japan did more aggressively try to integrate Korea into Japan, including Japanese education, and they did a ton of bad stuff. They conscripted Korean labor to work in Japanese war production factories and so on, which was essentially not paid and not compensated. So that was slave labor, and they were from people who considered themselves to be occupied. So they saw themselves as being used as slave labor. Which I think is objectively a fair way to describe it. Of course, we have the women who claim that they, the comfort women, and that problem, among the many, many other abuses that took part as part of the colonial period in Japan, in Korea. That was initially Japan's basic position is that was resolved when Japan established formal diplomatic relations with South Korea. It paid a sizable. They got together and they got the calculators out and they figured out how much Japan owed Korea for all of the harm it did Korea, from which they subtracted how much did Japan invest into Korea, which Korea is now benefiting from, things like railway lines and so on. And they subtracted that from the total. They gave the money to the South Korean government and they said, okay, we can have diplomatic relations and we can start to interact like normal countries so long as we agree that this payment is basically all of the restitution for everything to do with the war. So everything after this that Koreans have complaints about against Japan, we've given you the money and you have to deal with it, right? And that's kind of the basis that Japan established diplomatic relations with South Korea in 1965. So the idea being after that theoretically, it's the Korean government's obligation to anyone who's owed money from the war or whatever, that they have to make the claim to the Korean government to get the payments back. The thing is, in 1965, of course, Korea was a military dictatorship from a fairly Japanophilic General Park. And he decided that to take all the money from Japan for settling all the war claims and to spend it on economic development, which paid off handsomely for Korea. Of course, it's now actually got a higher, living standard and higher wage than Japan has now. It took a long time to get there, but of course, the downside is that South Korea basically never allowed war victims to make claims. They sort of just blocked them and spent the money themselves. And a lot of these victims, particularly as they get old and they need the compensation, and they've gone through their life without the compensation that they would have had earlier, have been bringing claims. And, it's always gone back and forth, whether an apology is enough, whether compensation is enough. Japan maintains it's already paid compensation, so why does it have to pay again? But South Koreans saying, well, that doesn't count. Basically, go back to 2 or 3 years ago, the Supreme Court or a court, initially a district court actually, I think it ended up with a Supreme Court finding in South Korea, found that it's against public policy to prevent people who were used as slave workers by the Japanese government during World War II from being able to get compensation. And hence, if, for example, those people For example, who worked for the ancestor company of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries has business in South Korea. The court is those people are allowed to claim compensation from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries was told by the Japanese government, don't pay them because if you do that, it'll open the floodgates on all of these claims. So the Korean courts basically authorized the confiscation of the assets of Japanese private companies in Korea to liquidate into money to pay as compensation to these victims, which Japan said repudiates the 1965 Diplomatic Relations Treaty and the settlement with South Korea. So Japan withdrew its, basically, I think its ambassador and a whole bunch of other stuff, and downgraded its relations with South Korea and just stopped talking to them about 3 or 4 years ago. And Korea's got and at the time, the dynamic here is that just like when Japan settled the comfort women issue multiple times, and when it's settling the war labor issue now, it always basically settles these deals with Japanophile. It's got a political element in Korea, typically more the right wing, with the exception of Kim Dae-jung, who of course lived in Japan for a long time in exile from the military dictatorship in South Korea. But the right wing is typically more, we need to be friends with America, we should have good relations with Japan, we should look forward and put the past, settle the past and move forward. You'd think right wing is typically more nationalistic and would be maybe more anti-Japanese, but typically it's more the left in Korea is more that we should kick out America. We should lob pot shots at Japan forever and make them suffer and be friends with North Korea. And typically, it's more a leftist thing in Japan to be in Korea to be anti-Japanese. So what happens with all of these deals is it's always right-wing governments that do deals, just like Park, the daughter of the original Park, who did the deal over the comfort women and was then lost an election and then put into jail. And the deal was completely repudiated by the next left-wing by the next left-wing president, where he said, "We're undoing the settlement. We're going to have to treat it like it never happened." And now we have a right-wing government again. That government got kicked out. Now a right-wing government's back and saying, yeah, now let's settle the war labor thing. And Japan's kind of like, well, that's very nice. We're very happy that you want to do it. But no one's getting excited because everyone knows what happens in the political cycles in Korea is that the next government's going to come in. And there's a high chance that, again, they're going to see this as selling out old people who want an apology and direct compensation from Japan. And they're not going to like any sort of a settlement about this, and they're going to use it politically to their advantage to try to get an edge over the right-wing parties in South Korea, which is why Japan knows that even if they do a deal, they're not going to stick to it. There's been the track record, every single time, back to 1995, when they admitted the comfort women issue. So the solution that the Korean government is currently proposing is that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs itself will set up a fund which it will use to pay war labor victims compensation. Question of how that's going to be funded and if Japan's going to contribute to that is kind of unclear at the moment. But already, apparently, left-wing newspapers in South Korea are criticizing that, saying, "Well, that's just the foreign ministry letting Japan off the hook without giving compensation or an apology." And why should a Korean government tax-funded entity be paying for the compensation when it's Japan that owes us the apology and the compensation? And that's what's ultimately going to bring this down. But the solution itself is consistent with the 1965 treaty. It's what Japan is demanding in exchange for restarting ties. And of course, the bet that the right-wing government there is making is that if they improve ties with Japan, it'll be good for the economy, it'll be good for defense, and it'll ultimately help them perform better in government, and everyone will appreciate it and keep them in government. But as always seems to happen, when the government there loses, it gets ugly and it turns against Japan. So, it's nice that they're doing something about this, but I don't know where it's going to go. So, we will see. Anyway, good to see you, Odie Jr. Bada boom, good morning. Good to have you in here. They'll always. This will never get resolved. As much as I would love it to be resolved, I don't think it will. Just scrolling back up the comments, that was not easy to summarize, I guess. Good to see Brad F in here. Get a convertible. Let my hair go fresh in the air. Yes, I actually did that in a convertible Mustang a few years ago. I'll take the advice of the hive mind here and not get a convertible Mustang this time, but hell, why not? I mean, at least when it gets warm. Dan H, they have been slowly and quietly moving out of China for their cheaper items. Fast retailing. Fast retailing moving to Vietnam, Bangladesh, Indonesia, India. Also, they were involved in right with Rana Plaza. I did not know that. That's the building that collapsed, right? Well, it's fast fashion, so I guess, well, it's good they're paying some people more anyway. But yeah, what can we do? Uh, is this my life? Just mentioning you're in Japan 2016. Forgot your wallet. Guy ran after you to give it to you. I've had the same experience multiple times. It's a nice thing about being in Japan. Odie Jr., no problem being late. Welcome to the chat. We've got, can all the NK supporters in SK be sent to NK for extended tours? Good record. Well, they did. There was actually a tourist resort, which they used to be able to go to, except one of them, apparently one of the South Korean tourists was so friendly and wanted to wander outside of the resort and was, of course, shot and killed by the tour guides. So the tourism enterprise ended up not working out. The sunshine policy, if we go all the way into that story, which I won't, it got dark fast. So yeah, they tried, but what can we do? Dan H. mentioning similar happened with the reparations agreement between Israel and Germany. A large number of elderly Holocaust survivors in Israel are living in poverty. Well, yeah, that's a whole can of worms itself. Remember as well, not just from Germany, a large percentage of Israeli Jews are refugees from Arab countries that were expelled in 1948, and they didn't get any compensation. They haven't gotten any compensation. A lot of people in Israel, were there as refugees, were starting with nothing, and certainly, I don't know the story with Germany. Germany somehow has really good PR about this. People always say Japan should be more like Germany. I'm not sure Germany is quite as good as everybody makes out, but yeah, it's complicated. Credit to the parties for doing this one, I think, in good faith, but we'll see if it sticks. As usual, I've just realized that there are still some big stories to talk about yet, and we have 15 minutes to go. So let's push on. Yeah, 10,000 deaths in a month. We're seeing the highest daily number of COVID deaths we've ever seen in Japan. Again, mainly from clusters in elderly homes. But still, it's far from over. And this XBB variant in America that seems to be extra contagious is worrying. So we'll see what happens with that. A really interesting story here featured by NHK. Everybody knows about Sugihara, the diplomat who I believe was in Lithuania or somewhere like that, who issued transit visas through Japan for Jews basically looking to escape Nazi persecution in Eastern Europe, and save thousands of people by issuing them transit visas that they could go through Japanese territory. I believe actually not Japan. I think it might have been through Manchuria actually, but it might have been Japan. And he did it not being authorized to, and he saved a lot of Jewish people's lives, a lot of Israeli people. Very thankful to. In fact, not Sugihara. What's his name? But anyway, there is a famous Japanese Schindler. However, there's another Japanese Schindler, which again, a lot of Jews directly still pay tribute to and attribute their survival to, called Higuchi. And they tell a sort of story in the chat here. Basically, his story is that he was a major general in the Imperial Japanese Army, Kwantung, the Kwantung-gun, the Kanto Regiment, which was based in Manchuria. As the Nazis rose, and there were a lot of Jews trying to escape persecution. Again, Nazi persecution. It was interesting. Both Major General Higuchi, as well as, interestingly, the head of the Kanto army in Manchuria, who was a certain Tojo Hideki, in charge of the secret police and the Kanto army, which also, by the way, triggered the Manchuria rail incident that was used as a pretext for starting the war against China. Those guys, so guys that did some bad things. Unit 731 started in Manchuria in 1936. This happened in 1938. So again, people, it's kind of funny. On the one hand, people could be very anti-humanitarian, at least in the case of Tojo Hideki. But at the same time, both Tojo Hideki and this guy Higuchi really saw, a bit like Japanese seeing the plight of Ukrainians now, they saw, wow, we have to help all these Jewish people. The Japanese have always had a kind of a very, it's kind of funny, they read all the anti-Zionist, all the anti-Jewish, like Elders of Zion propaganda against, all the anti-Semitic propaganda. And weirdly, a lot of Japanese read it and thought, wow, these people are cool. We want to be like them. And it's kind of funny, even now when you talk about, I think Japanese have such a strong association with of Jewishness with like Einstein and people like that. They think that Jewish people are smart and we should be like them. And there was this thing that they really wanted to do something to help the humanitarian cause of escaping Jews. And actually, in his role as an administrator of Manchuria, he issued 20,000 visas to allow Jews not just to transit through Manchuria, but to actually move to Manchuria and live in both Harbin and in Japanese occupied Shanghai throughout the duration of the war with Japanese protection. Again, ironically, while the Kantogun under Tojo was carrying out horrific humanitarian war crimes against Chinese people and Manchurian people, they were also humanitarians who actually sponsored the location of tens of thousands of Jewish people and protection of those people under the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II. It's a weird paradox, but again, those survivors still pay tribute to the to General Higuchi, who was the one who actually went out of his way to to give refuge to those fleeing Jews. I had no idea about this story, and again, they don't talk about the context of. They mentioned that he was a major general in the Canton Army in 1938, and they mentioned also that Tojo Hideki also felt similar. I found on Wikipedia that he also was worried about the humanitarian plight of the Jewish people. When you put I put the context together and thought, wow, that's a little bit weird. I mean, it's nice. Don't I guess even bad people do good things. And certainly people do. He saved a lot of lives in this regard, in this particular way, and he's appreciated by the people who he saved. But at the same time, the broader context is, of course, I think you can't look at it in isolation. Fascinating story, anyway. Sadiq Hakanguris, good to have you here in the chat. Aaron, 8 minutes overtime. We're heading for 8 minutes overtime. We might, because although I don't have that many stories left, I do have stories left. Oh God. Yeah, we're going to go 8 minutes overtime. I think Cobras Tenchi predicted it exactly. Game time. What can we do? Yeah, Cobras Tenchi. Germany's really bad at PR about that, especially these days. As everyone else owes money to first, Ukraine second, our military third, and the rest can go bite us. I think Greece and Poland recently sent $1 trillion invoices to Germany. I think the idea that Germany's settled everything up financially is probably a slight exaggeration, but yes. Okay, let's dive into it. That is the Korean setting up a fund to pay war crime victims, which again, I hope they work. I hope it goes well, but what can you do? Not expecting too much. This is Lucy holding out the football again. Interesting one. The New York public schools banned ChatGPT. They're worried that it's going to help kids cheat on their tests. Interesting, the article here, which I was able to read the other day, seems to be paywalled now, was actually talking about how, or I saw other articles criticizing this, saying that, so similar school boards actually banned the use of computers and the use of the internet in the past. I think the view is now, of course, you can find cheat exam answers and essays. Apparently, that is a thing. It was after my time, but you can cheat using the internet. But at the same time, the goal is not so much to tell kids not to use the internet; it's to use the internet intelligently, to find answers. And apparently, back in the 1980s, many school boards were banning the use of computers, with some prominent academics saying that using computers is going to make all kids illiterate within 10 years. Again, arguably our penmanship has gotten worse. Mine was never good to begin with. I think computers saved me from that. But these are tools that we should be learning to empower people with, not like banning them, worrying that it's going to make them stupid. But interesting to see that debate starting to happen. Miyagi Prefecture, we're worried about depopulation. We need more foreigners. Good to see someone saying it out loud and prominently. And Miyagi is one of the bigger prefectures. It's up north. It's basically the prefecture with Sendai in it. Sendai, by the way, in terms of most livable cities in Japan, like on rankings, Sendai and Fukuoka and Sapporo, I think, are at the top of cities in Japan that basically are complete. They have everything that you'd want in a city. They've got a large population, but they've also got a really good quality of life, good wages, Um, cheap food. The case of Sendai, it's got a fantastic beach and coast, and it's got wonderful summers. It's also near mountains, and there's skiing. It's a great food producing area, and it's a full featured city with a bullet train line, a decent airport, and yeah, it's a great place. It's actually, I think it's always ranked one or two in terms of the most livable cities in Japan. So I would say if you're a foreigner looking for a place to come and live in Japan, I mean, Miyagi Prefecture is not only a great place to live, but the governor wants more foreigners to go live there. It's a win-win. Of course, the downside of this is that Japan is still not great at integrating foreigners. It's done this proactively in the past. Of course, Nikkei Brazilians going into Gunma and Shizuoka Prefecture, and it kind of brings them in and doesn't do anything to help with integration. Public services, schools, stuff like that. So there is still some struggle in that regard. It's not just a matter that we need the numbers or whatever. It's there's definitely been improvements in accepting, particularly, of course, in Tokyo. But so long as the enthusiasm for foreigners is matched with infrastructure to be able to actually accept them and integrate them, then I think it's a good idea. I want to talk about ChatGPT. Oh yeah, it's there, the mind-blown one. Okay, let's keep going. 7 minutes. I can do this. Kishida's dead meat. I said that at the beginning of the chat, so I can skip this one. I went for a lovely run. I'm still trying to get my iWatch calibrated so that it will actually show my fitness, and it still won't do it, and I'm still talking to Apple support. It's taken 4 months, and it still doesn't work. It's driving me crazy. I did go for it. I've been looking for flat running courses, and because it was so nice running by the Sumida River, I decided to run to the Sumida River along the Kanda River. The Sumida River is quite a big river, and there is a large recreational area beside it, so you can run beside it. The Kanda River is more, it's a traditional, in traditional Edo Tokyo, the rivers were, of course, like the highways, the train lines. People would use barges to get around, so these were the traditional means of transport around Tokyo. And that's why, actually, particularly with the Kanda River, when they had to put in highways and subways, they actually used the rivers and the canals for where they put the highways. So they completely just cemented over the rivers in a lot of places so that you can barely see them. The Kanda River, on the one hand, this is a really striking photo. I took it from a bridge, and it looks really cool seeing the row of buildings like up against the river. It's kind of striking. But on the other hand, of course, those buildings are literally up against the river. There's no footpath or anything beside the river, and the moat walls just go straight up, the canal walls, and it's a long river. And it's just occurred to me, like as much as I liked running along the Kanda River, I was running on the streets parallel to the river, checking across to see if the river was still there, to see if I was on course. I do think it would be really nice as part of upgrading Tokyo. One thing that the Tokyo government has been doing, it's taken 20 years, is they're actually moving part of the highway that they used to just run above the river, putting it in permanent darkness. They've created a tunnel to relocate the central C1 circular highway under the river to be able to give sunlight to the Nihonbashi area near Tokyo Station again, which used to be a major landmark of Tokyo. All these Tokyo is a river city. So they're trying to basically reinvigorate the environment around the rivers as a place that Tokyo people should go and enjoy and be proud of, even though it's been buried under a highway overpass for the last 50 years now. Maybe a step if people start appreciating the rivers again, which I do. It'd be nice if they'd maybe clip on some running tracks or some walking recreational tracks along these canals. It'd be really nice. Hey, good to see you, Nestor. So that was an impression I had from a very nice run that I did. AI stuff. Okay, so we're almost there. I'll take the last topic first. The yen has hit 127 yen to the dollar. So the dollar is getting cheaper and the yen is getting more valuable, which is, I suppose, good, given that, it's kind of messing with me a little bit. It means I won't be quite so poor when I go to America, which is good. The problem is I'm being paid in US dollars based on my Japanese salary a month ago when it was 150 yen. So I've got to complain about that and get that readjusted because it's now it adds up to being a material amount of money. But I think overall, if you live in Japan and earn money in Japanese yen, as I do, it is a good thing that yen is coming back to normal. Again, 110 is the normal level. 125 is like normally the peak in terms of the cheapest that the yen gets. So it still is slightly outside of that, but it is rapidly, in like a month, it's gone from 150 to 127. Unfortunately for anyone coming to Japan, that means that Japan is, of course, getting more expensive. But it's still good. 4 minutes, I can do this. Okay, 3 topics, but one of them I can kill quickly. Former Russian President Medvedev, basically the hand puppet of Putin for one term so that he could get another presidential term, made a helpful suggestion that the Japanese prime minister, for being such a lapdog of the Americans, the American imperialists, should disembowel himself. To his credit, apparently, when he said this in Russian, he did not use the typical word haruki. He actually said seppuku, which is the culturally more sensitive and correct term. So he deserves some credit for using the correct terminology. But wow, I mean, talk about a country that's just become a cartoonish caricature of just an unhinged, evil aggressor country. Wonderful to see, by the way, that Germany looks like. I think that they agree to let Poland give Ukraine Leopard tanks, and possibly about to see Bradley fighting vehicles, maybe even some Abrams. It's good that everyone's pivoting to realizing that we need to give Ukraine offensive weapons, because frankly, I don't think people like this in the United Nations or in any other forum really deserve anything, honestly, any sort of a hearing. It's just, not acceptable. Yeah, America's done bad stuff too, but here we're talking about Russia, and this is Russia, right? So yeah, thank you. Let's give them some tanks. The Ukrainians, I mean. Okay, two more stories. Best for last. First of all, I am going to talk about. I've had I've already been talking the last couple of weeks how using ChatGPT and using these, graphic generators and so on has been blowing my mind, as I shared with Marcos Fernandez earlier. I came back to ChatGPT on Friday. There's some apps like MyChat. I always wanted to build an app that was on the internet that pulled in all my YouTube videos and would organize them into a playlist and just play it like a TV show of all the videos that I want to watch, that I would curate naturally through my subscriptions. And I wanted to be able to watch playlists of certain groupings of videos. And, I did that. I found a person to help me develop that with a nice guy in Pakistan who I loved working with. They also introduced me to a logo creator who I paid for a logo to be made for the site, which I still love, my MyChan TV logo. This guy coded the site the way that I asked him to do it. We tested it. It took months. It cost a bunch of money. It worked, but it didn't really take off, and I didn't really figure out how to monetize it. I ended up just realizing, I had to pull the plug on it because it was costing too much money. And I wasn't really, it wasn't any closer to becoming a business, although it was a cool thing. It was good that I executed and actually got it working, but it was kind of buggy and I never got all the way there. I have so many ideas for apps that I've always wanted to build for this, but just realizing it's going to cost money and I'm not sure how it would end up. So I went to ChatGPT on Friday just for a bare bones, just for a demo of a really simple app that I similar to an app that I use every day for my work that I've always wanted to make. And it took 5 or 6 goes, but basically it generated all of the code. In 10 minutes, I was able to get a working version of this app that I've spent years, and that I was actually considering a few weeks ago paying someone on Fiverr $300 to make for me and show me how to make when they made it. There's someone offering to make the specific type of app that I wanted to make using in a specific way. And I was about to pay $300 for it, and ChatGPT showed me how to not only make the API working with an AI interface, but also coded a web page for it and an interface and a playback thing for basically a text-to-speech, like a playback proofreading app. 10 minutes for free. So I'm realizing now, while artists are freaking out that this might be taking away artists' work, this is more going to endanger actually the developers are the ones who are developing these apps in the first place. All of a sudden, all these ideas that I've had for apps that I've just not had the skills to be able to make, ChatGPT gave me all the code. I copied and pasted it into Notepad. I switched it from text to HTML. It was just a bunch of JavaScript and HTML, and it guided me through how to set up the API interface with the AI servers. And I got it working. It was just so cool, and it just made me realize, oh crap! All of a sudden, all the ideas that I've had that I keep in notebooks and that I've had all these years, I can make anything with this. I can build any app. And actually, I needed to go lie down. And ever since then, I've been building other apps as well. The reason they're not available at the moment, I've actually built a website for them. And I will make them available as I start to play around with these more, I've got to get the security on them right. And because I just wanted to get it bare bones and working well enough, I didn't. I created them in a very unsecure but easy to see how it works kind of a way. Like building a car where there's no body and no seats. It's just it's just the engine and a steering wheel and some wheels at the moment. So I can't share it for security reasons until it's ready. But when it's ready, I will share these things. And now the gap I have is just learning how to set up the security on these things, which also I'm learning from ChatGPT. So yeah, and just tonight I started playing with Midjourney. Marcos recommended it for me, and yeah, it compiled. It worked. I mean, not the first time. It took a few goes, but it worked. It worked well. And it was elegant. It was short. Yeah, Marcos told me I've been using a bunch of like DALL-E and Stable Diffusion for like art, but he said no, you got to use Midjourney. So I went and used Midjourney, and it made a logo for my site that I love, that I was just tweeting about earlier, that I'm going to use on the site. It's amazing. So we're in an age now where, at least in terms of like ideas, I mean, yeah. So the idea that we can use ChatGPT, of course, you can use ChatGPT to give you cooking recipes and instructions. Probably how to fix a car or do something like that. I mean, this goes into the physical world, but in the virtual world, yeah, this is literally a technology which has just come out and is going to exponentially improve. And the point is as well, I'm not a technical person. I can read code. I used to work with code, but I don't code now. But I know enough. I could get it to give me help to my personal level. It was like having a personal coach for free that helped me do this. So all of a sudden, the world that is just opening up from this, of things that we can do, it's like having a Star Trek replicator machine. That all of a sudden it feels like we can just make anything that we want. What would you do if I suddenly gave you a replicator machine? It's almost overwhelming, all the things that you can do with it, and that's how I feel with this at the moment. This is something I feel good about going to Seattle when this is going on, because there's so many places I can learn about this, and I'll have obviously more time. But mind blown, very, very excited about this. Final topic, the big topic, Midjourney better than DALL-E. That's how I'm finding it, Nesta, at least based on just using Midjourney briefly tonight. So the outputs that I'm seeing from it, I really like. They all have their own different styles, but what can we do? Nesta, did I ask ChatGPT if it has watched my content? Did it already like you? You know what? I asked it as a test like weeks ago, ChatGPT. Write a script. Tell a story about this in the style of Philip DeFranco, and it did not quite the "Hey, you beautiful bastards" intro, but it did something that was very red, like the voice of Philip DeFranco. It recognized it. So then I said, "Do that for Hiko Simon," and it came out totally generic. It didn't recognize me. So I don't know. Maybe GPT-4 will recognize me. It's just got to get a bigger data set. Anyway. You know what? I think Cobras Tenshi and Aaron were completely right that it's going to be 15 minutes over. So we're 5 minutes over now, and we have the final story for the night. Gwen Stefani. Well, first of all, I should declare I like Gwen Stefani. No doubt was awesome as a solo artist. She's great. She's just very appealing as an artist, and her enthusiasm for things that she gets into, including Japan, is something that I find endearing. And apparently, as I think everybody knows by now, she did an interview during the week with some magazine that she was talking about her Harajuku phase and her how she feels very connected to Japan because her dad used to work for a Japanese company, Yamaha, and he would often do trips to Japan and tell her all about Japan, which got her very excited about it. And when she finally came here, she felt like she was home. And then she proceeded to say to the interviewer, so, it's like, I love Japan so much. It's such a big part of my life. I mean, I am Japanese. She said it like 3 times to the apparently Filipino American, which is to me American. I mean, American with an Asian appearance, Asian background. But she said 3 times to an increasingly cringing and uncomfortable feeling Asian American reporter that she is Japanese. Now, I've never said I am Japanese, and I've lived here most of my life. That said, I mean, what I do say openly is while I am a New Zealander, my passport and citizenship is New Zealand. I have not lived there since 1998. And, culturally, if you talk about the cultural norms and values and what I'm most familiar and comfortable with and where I've lived, I'm more Japanese now, arguably, than New Zealand. I definitely have parts of New Zealand identity still, but I go back to New Zealand and I'm not in sync at all with that. I do say I am more Japanese. Japan is my home. I'm more Japanese than New Zealand, I even say, which is and look, factually, sure, it's incorrect. Gwen Stefani is not Japanese, like in any way. She has no Japanese ancestry, nor is she a Japanese citizen. But she was saying the statement in her eccentric way as an expression of how much she just is in love with Japan, how crazy she is about Japan, and how much she loves Japan. And, the comment came from a place of love. So while it was a bit weird, I recognize that she meant well, and that's fine. But apparently the huge controversy, a bit like the people wearing, the white people wearing kimonos in front of the art gallery in New Jersey, same situation, that you have people who are appreciating and loving of Japanese culture and expressing that love through that. But Asian Americans claiming that this is appropriation of their, of Japanese culture, which they claim ownership of in the context of life within America. So to give it the proper hearing, and the journalist herself explaining that, she suffered discrimination as an Asian American. And so the idea that a blonde-haired, white person can claim ownership of an Asian identity without having suffered the way that people who have Asian identity suffer racial discrimination in America, is wrong. To which I'd say, well, Asian Americans are not Japanese. Japanese don't suffer racial discrimination generally because Japan's like 98% Japanese. And I get it. In the context of America, this whole thing has a totally different meaning, and it is offensive to people in America. But I would say there's actually a video which I posted tonight of some sites which have gone and taken random samples of chatter about this, and everything I've seen and my instincts about this as well were Japanese people love it when people love them. When people wear kimonos, Japanese people love it. There's no, there's very little understanding of the issue of appreciation, of appropriation as a negative thing from a Japan context. Because Japan's culture is based on appropriation of Western culture and Chinese culture. I mean, there's a good summary of Japanese comments responding to this, saying how Gwen Stefani appropriating Japanese aspects of Japanese culture because she appreciates them. If that was wrong, well, Japan appreciated Western pop music, Western dress, Chinese ramen, Indian curry. We wouldn't have anything if we didn't appropriate. So, and if, again, Japanese comments that I've seen on the website, if she was appropriating in a negative way, like mocking way or, whatever, then that would be problematic. But she's not doing that. She's doing it out of love. So it's all good. And I kind of think as well, even if you acknowledge that this might be harmful to some very sensitive people, including people claiming ownership, indeed, I mean, in a way, what's the appropriation? Is people are Asian Americans who are not of Japanese ancestry claiming, gatekeeping Japanese identity? Is that not appropriation of Japanese identity? It's a complex area, identity politics. But look, and often, and again, a lot of the chatter has included views that why are there so many white men defending Gwen Stefani? And I'm the hell guilty as charged, and not just because I'm a fan. But look, I think ultimately, from my perspective, people can have different views on this. There's people who I respect who have different views to me on this, but my view is look at where the intent is. When I see Gwen Stefani saying something I wouldn't say, and honestly, probably it was a mistake saying it the way that she said it, but she said it out of love. And in that context, she meant well, and it's okay. And Japanese people appreciate that she said it out of love, and, are thankful for it. She's just, and then you've got the people shooting back at her, and it's literally a hate mob. It's another hate mob, right? And and that's wrong too, if you ask me. And, I have more of a problem with the gatekeepers acting out of hate over this than I do Gwen Stefani acting out of love on this. I really think life is too short to follow hate mobs. You've got to focus on, the love side of things, not the hate side of things. And that tells me to say, Gwen, it's okay. But yeah, rather don't hate haters back. Love people who love back. That's the way to do it. the moral of the story, the end of the show. Let's end on that. That's the conclusion I came to this week. It's such a waste of energy, spending energy getting angry at somebody, especially bouncing back hate against hate. It just gets into a frenzy. Approach people who show love with love, even when they make a mistake. You can still explain to her in a nice way that thank you for loving Japan. Probably shouldn't say it that way, but we appreciate it. That's what you do. So much energy gets lost in the world, and so much productivity is lost on hate. Don't hate. Be a lover, not a hater. That's the end of the show. 42 minutes past. Yeah, we're going to be a solid. You know me so well. It's like you're an AI that's been tracking all of my data. I don't need AI. You all know me too well already. This has been Tokyo Tonight. It is. I'm 12 minutes over. I'm going to finish. Haters going to hate. Damn straight, Aaron. Make love, not war. Everybody. See, you all. This is why you are my people. You understand. You are my ChatGPT. You understand what I'm thinking. I don't need ChatGPT to write my scripts. It's an exciting time to be alive, by the way. As you know, I'm a delusional optimist. I'm going to have fun diving more into this AI stuff and continuing to have my mind blown. I will be around on Saturday. If you want to say hello, I'd love to say hello to anyone who's around in Tokyo. Hobgoblin, Roppongi, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., 3 hours. I will be in and out, but looking forward to being in America soon. Looking forward to see all of you soon. Looking forward to just hanging out on Twitter and being back here on Tokyo Tonight. Have a good week. Stay safe. Don't get the Rona. And boom. Peace. What a time to be alive. Hold on to your papers. Man, I love that 2-minute paper series so much. But yeah, I want to be like that. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Peace. Any stream.